and how we put ourselves in these boxes in an effort to remain safe, in an effort to just, we don't like something that we don't understand, or that's new, or that's different. But I think we're missing out on a lot if we don't just turn the knob. Just make a little bit of effort. Turn the knob, maybe tap the door a little bit. It doesn't all have to be all at once. There's so much out there if you just allow it. And if you notice resistance, if you notice just this, like you find yourself just not wanting to ignore, just get curious about that and invite it in, because that means it's meant for you. That's what I believe. That means there's something there for you to learn.
Welcome to the Light the Day podcast, where we explore spiritually transformative experiences. Today, I have on the show Meagan Skidmore. Hi, Meagan.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you on this show. I was on your show a month or two ago, and you said, "Oh, I would love to be on yours," and we made it happen. So I'm excited.
Me
Will
too.
you start out by sharing just a little bit about yourself before we kind of go back into your story?
Sure. So I'm Meagan Skidmore. I am in the Dallas, Texas area, and we have been here since the early 2000s. Wow. um, I'm originally from Arizona. Um, I am, I was born and raised in the LDS faith, and all of my siblings, my extended family, all on both sides are members, quite a few generations back.
Yeah. And for
I,
those that aren't familiar with the LDS faith, that's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and
yeah,
commonly referred to as Mormon. Yeah.
right. Um, I am second of six. Um, I, gosh, I'm not really sure what. Okay, so in college, I studied the social sciences, and I ended up getting my master's in school counseling psychology. I stayed home as a mom, though, and that certification kind of expired. It was specific to the state of Utah, because that's where I graduated from, and so it was not meaningful here in Texas.
Okay.
But I stayed at home with my kids. I did all the volunteering things for many, many years, both in the church and in the community. I During COVID, I found life coaching,
Mm.
and it was timely because as we were navigating my child's queer identity, we had learned in 2019 that they identified as LGBTQ plus, and that has been a pivotal moment for me in my just overall, not just spiritual journey, but kind of life journey. So I certified through the life coach school, and I started my business in 2021. And I have done subsequent certifications since then. I've done a trauma informed certification. I did story coaching certification, and I'm currently doing emotional alchemy. And this is my calling in life.
Mm.
This, I have found what I am meant to do and expand on. It's fits like a glove, and it's been one of the most moving, exciting things for me to feel guided to and so aligned with. I am also in the process of publishing a book. It's in the editing stage now, and it's called Transparency.
Mm.
It's my journey, how I learned to see through my journey as a parent of a transgender kiddo.
Mm,
And part of the author's mastermind that I am in with Kira Brinton and Joan of Arc Publishing, our stories are going to be part of an upcoming docuseries, called Legacy Makers.
okay.
And so that will happen later this year. I actually go to record next month.
Mhm. Mm.
And all of us in this same mastermind are going to be part of a reality series called Writer's Island. So I'm going to be writing a second book as part of that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm feeling like pretty much an open book these days.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
writing books is definitely a journey.
Yes.
For sure, 100%. It feels like, and I'm familiar with some of the work you do. And
Hmm.
in fact, share a little bit about you have a podcast. What's the name of your podcast? What has
Yes.
that been about? And
Yeah, that's a great question. So, about 2 years into my coaching journey, after I had certified, one of the things coaches will do to connect with folks, find people looking for what they are sharing and have to offer, a natural thing that they will do is start a podcast. At the time, it didn't feel very natural, but I felt very guided, very called to start it. And I termed it Beyond the Shadow of Doubt in the beginning. Started at August of 2022. And that came from a phrase that I heard a lot growing up: certainty and knowing something from kind of an absolute point of view was prized. That's what, you know, in a conservative faith like the one I was raised in, that's what we're taught. That's what we're encouraged to seek. And when my lived reality with my queer kiddo just slammed right into, what I had been taught, right? And the beliefs that I've been raised on. It just, it gave me huge pause and began this. That's kind of when I call it my pivot in my faith journey really started. And this podcast was very much an extension of that, but also of what I do as a coach and how that intertwined with the faith journey. So, fast forward to last year, and I started to feel kind of this heaviness.
well, let's back up just a minute
Okay.
because when
Okay.
you started the podcast, what was your main focus of that podcast? Like, I know you do interviews and kind
Yes.
of share a little bit about like what your main focus was, because then that will help
Um,
us understand the heaviness that you were feeling when you.
right. I kind of skipped over that. Yeah. Um, so I picked the name Beyond the Shadow of Doubt because I realized as I was trying to make sense of my world and navigate this immense cognitive dissonance that I was experiencing, I started to realize that I was not allowing myself to have these doubts, to allow questions. I found that I was feeling some shame around it, some not enoughness. And I was making it mean a lot of things about me as an individual, about me on a soul level, like that I wasn't, a good Christian or a good person, or that I had somehow failed, or somehow I made it mean a lot of things. And I really wanted to dig deeper in that area, in that theme, and figure out what was going on for me. And I also decided that I decided doubt, it it kind of had been given a bad rap, I guess. And I wanted to look beyond that negative stigma that was kind of attached to having doubts and allowing questions. And I have on the other side, I see faith and doubt are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. The opposite of faith is not certainty,
Mhm.
it's doubt. And so that actually evolved and blossomed into a really beautiful journey of I in hindsight I could see I didn't start off with interviews. I wasn't going to do that.
Okay.
They were just single episodes with me talking about different concepts related to doubt, related to a faith journey, related to coaching concepts too.
Hmm.
But then I started to feel the tug, and just surrendered. And I have had over 100 guests, and it's been amazing, and I've loved it because I've learned something from each of them. And simultaneously, I've been able to give voice to a lot of queer individuals. And that has been extremely enlightening and actually deepened my understanding of the divine
Mm.
and increased my appreciation for diversity and how much we really just can't comprehend,
Yeah.
and how we put ourselves in these boxes in an effort to remain safe, in an effort to just, we don't like something that we don't understand or that's new or that's different. But I think we're missing out on a lot if we don't just just turn the knob. Just make a little bit of effort. Turn the knob, maybe tap the door a little bit. It doesn't all have to be all at once. Just there's so much out there if you just allow it. And if you notice resistance, if you notice just this like you find yourself just not wanting to ignore, just get curious about that and invite it in because it's that means it's meant for you. That's what I believe. That means there's something there for you to learn.
Interesting. And how did that, you mentioned like it, changed
Hmm.
your feelings about the divine. Can you share a little bit about that and what that meant to you?
Yeah. So when you are raised in a society that basically said, and everybody, it's just generally accepted, at least in my world that I grew up in, if a baby is identified by a doctor because they have a penis, then they're a baby boy. And the converse is true. If a baby is identified on the external, we're talking external body parts, with a vagina and all of that, then they're a girl, a baby girl. And life just isn't that black and white. Nature isn't that black and white, right? There's daylight and there's darkness, but there's a whole lot of in between there, right? There's dawn. There's that beautiful little teeny glow right before the sun starts to peek over and become the beginnings of a sunrise, right? There's steps and stages throughout that entire sunrise. And even as the sun goes across the sky, midday is very different sun than early morning or late sun. And then that's not even taking into account when you hit the later evening hours, dusk,
Hmm.
and when the sun starts to go down and you can feel it in the air. It's generally cooler. You know, I did an interview with fellow transgender moms of transgender kiddos, and one of them said, "My child is the twilight, is
Hmm.
the dawn, is the dusk." We don't live in the absolutes of 100% daylight or 100% darkness. And that's just one analogy.
Hmm.
Everywhere in nature, you're going to see variants. There's species that spontaneously go from one sex to the other so that it can survive. So when I say I've learned, it's deepened my understanding of the divine. I just the God that I have come to know um, is so creative, so not boring, and uses a palette of colors that I don't even have names for, right? Um, the Divine's palette is not simply black and white. And I had to really, you know, contemplate, ponder, think a lot when my kiddo told me that they identified um, in a way that I wasn't familiar with,
Yeah.
in a way that there were voices around me. I'll just say in society in general, that can mean all all the sources, right? Family, faith, politics, education, whatever. The voices, the overarching voices that were out there didn't have positive things to say
Mhm.
about this phenomena. And in what started out as a fear that I was losing my child became this otherworldly understanding of we all have masculine energies, what are considered by humans to be masculine things, masculine interests, masculine talents, masculine gifts, right? And at the same time, we all have feminine energies and gifts and talents. And I use the words masculine and feminine is because that's the vocabulary we have right now. There are other cultures and societies that have long identified a third gender through their pronouns, through other means of language. And that's history. That's not just something hopeful or wishful thinking. That's historical. And so I realized that I wasn't losing my child. Their heart, their soul, their being, what was in here wasn't going anywhere. That was the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their divinity was the same. And just because externally that might, be something I needed to change my perception of or understanding of, it didn't mean I was losing my child. I also was struck by how much I really learned how much we tend to judge and size up others based on external cues, external definitions. Whereas this journey has taught me to really focus on the heart and see souls.
Wow. Yeah.
And I would not have seen that coming. And I truly believe that's how the divine sees us.
Yeah.
And I still have some ways to go, but I'm grateful for the pivot that has taught me things I don't think I would have learned otherwise.
Yeah. From certainty to the liminal to the
Mm-hmm.
known to the discovery of new ways of thinking, new ways of experiencing the divine, new ways of understanding things. And at the same time, you, your child, your family, it's a grieving process to go through
Mm-hmm.
the transition. Each person is grieving what was, even if the
Right.
journey is taking you to a new and better space. Eventually, it is still a painful journey to go from
Yes.
what was to a new reality.
Right. And I don't want to make it sound like this happened overnight
Oh,
and
yeah.
that it was, easy. Or that I'm not still activated at times, right? If I see old pictures, for instance,
Yeah.
or go through some old boxes or whatever, or Facebook memory pops up.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that,
The loss of expectations. You had an expectation that things were going to move forward
mhm,
in a certain way, and then things change. And that is a loss of expectations and a
mhm,
loss of plans and a redefining of your life and your experiences. And it's
right,
okay for that to be challenging. But it's also such a beautiful journey to, because what I've discovered in doing these interviews is that everyone's journey includes pain points that creates a new breaking open, a new
mhm,
discovery, a new understanding.
for
And
sure,
that has certainly
for
been
sure.
a universal
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
universal experience for sure. You've mentioned a few times feeling guided and called. What does that look like for you when you feel guided and called to go in a certain direction? And if
Sometimes
you
my
want to
first,
focus on a specific, instance, that's good too. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I think my first realization that I'm meant for something is my resistance to it.
Mm,
um, or if I feel, you know, um, a certain vibration of emotion, whether that's a little bit of fear, and I'll say, a healthy fear, a little bit of anxiety. That's how I felt before starting that podcast back in 20. I mean, I knew about it about a year before I actually made it a reality. I I heard it. It was like this voice. The name came to me. What I would talk about came to me. Kind of the themes and subjects I would address, but I put it off. Um, for me, it's a knowing that I just feel, and it's also a voice. It's genuinely just the way I grew up. Um, it was called the spirit. I I've introduced additional vocabulary to describe it. That sometimes aligns better with certain situations than others, but it's just this inner knowing, capital I, capital K. It's this inner voice that is me and yet is like a higher version of me, maybe because I'm the one listening, right?
yeah.
So it's like maybe the piece of divinity within me. Um, but for sure, okay, I say for sure. Let me back up. Um, I I think probably the easiest way for me to know, like, that this is what I should do is acting on it,
Mm,
doing something, saying something, um, making a choice of some kind, whatever it is that I might be navigating at the time. Does that make sense? And it's usually in the doing and in the saying and in the acting that I'm reassured.
yeah.
And
That
if I'm
makes
not, then it's a
sense to me.
place of learning.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. Years ago, I had this experience where someone said, heard my story and said, you're supposed to do something with this. And I didn't know what that meant, but it struck me like lightning. Like it was like a lightning bolt
Hmm.
when I heard that. And then for the next few years and trying to figure out what that was, I would actually talk to people about like I think I'm supposed to be doing grief work and
Hmm.
nobody it was like everybody responded to me with kind of this blank look.
Hmm.
Like they didn't have any idea what I was talking about. They weren't connecting to it. And so I was struggling to find my way to that because I was looking for validation outside of myself. But my higher self, God, spirit, whatever you want to call that, my angels were reminding me of my soul plan in that moment
Yeah.
when I heard, you're supposed to do something with this, and that struck like lightning. I could not let it go. So I like what you're talking about makes so much sense to me. It's like that resistance, but you can't let it go. The
Hmm.
resistance, but you can't let it go.
Yeah, you can't truly ignore it because
Yeah, because it's
it's
your calling.
real.
It's your
It's real. Yeah.
yeah, it's your path. It's your path.
Hmm.
So I kind of interrupted your story when you were talking about the podcast. So I want to go back to that
Sure.
point where you talked about started to become a little heavy, and you
Oh, yeah.
you were going through this transition of wanting to focus a little differently.
Yeah. Right. So I started to notice after more than one interview, I just kind of had this heavy feeling because faith journeys are hard. There's a lot of pain involved in navigating a faith journey. There's what you're going through, there's what other people around you are going through because of what they see you doing or not doing or saying or not saying. It can, frankly, be kind of excruciating and it's hard. And I, I had this thought and this feeling more than once. I'm kind of tired of this heaviness. I'm kind of, I don't, this doesn't feel quite right anymore, but I couldn't put my finger on the exact why
Mm-hmm.
um, or what to do differently until towards the end of the year. I I just heard the message come through that it was time to focus on the living that comes on the other side, living beyond this shadow of doubt.
Mm-hmm.
When
So is it fair to say you were really focused on the doubt piece? And I know you were
kind
interviewing
of
a
the
lot of
pain points,
the
kind of
pain
the,
points.
but also
Okay.
their stories. Like I love this collection of beautiful stories that I have from
Yeah.
these beautiful souls, because there is pain there. And I love every single one of the interviews. I think it was just more the focus needed to shift some. So I still talk about faith journeys, but my focus is there is so much joy on the other side of stepping into that uncertainty, on the other side of embracing the unknown when you don't know what that is, but you're surrendering to the journey, to what the divine is leading you to what is meant for you. And there has been so many things happen since the beginning of the year. Like looking back, I can see how this is so divinely orchestrated for me because I am stepping into my own spiritual sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really beautiful experience in January at a conference that I went to. And so I'd only had a few episodes up to that point of my recently reimagined podcast of Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. But it was so timely because I was open and I was receptive. And I remember receiving this message at a conference that I went to that I can claim who I am now. I don't have to wait until I die. I don't have to wait until after this life to claim my spiritual gifts, to cultivate that spiritual being that already exists. Um, I am already a priestess, a goddess, a spiritual soul. I'm already that. I
Wow.
don't have to wait until after death to step into that.
That's beautiful. I love the focusing on spiritual sovereignty, or we could say
Hmm.
spiritual autonomy,
Yeah,
where we claim and we own our own spiritual journey outside of maybe structures or other
yeah,
people's opinions or
yeah,
other claims. What do you feel like was I guess I have two questions. What do you feel like was
yeah.
holding you back from claiming your spiritual sovereignty before this point? And what do you feel like has been most helpful in beginning that process of claiming your I think this idea is like so pivotal. Like I just really
Hmm.
want to like put an
Yeah,
exclamation point on this right here, right now, as
yeah,
people are listening to really consider their own spiritual sovereignty and how that impacts them and how they can step into that. So I'd love to hear your
yeah,
own process of what was holding you back and maybe how you overcome
yeah.
some of that.
I think first and foremost, Julie, I don't think it occurred to me that I could.
Mm,
I don't think I realized it was available to me. Part of this journey, this this pivot that began 6 years ago now, I wrestled with this understanding that I had of God. There's a lot of pain there when an institution or a religion associates who is supposed to be our creator, all loving, all knowing, with the way, the reality of how LGBTQ folks are treated. And that's not the only area that is cause for concern, right? But for me, that's what was really front and center. There were times I was just really angry and hurt and sad and felt betrayed. And so I was kind of in this place of not really knowing what I thought about God for a little while.
there's
And
so much. Is it okay if I
yeah,
just share something real quickly? There's
yeah,
so much cognitive dissonance between when we have one concept of who and what God is, and then our experience isn't matching it. And
yeah,
that's what I feel like your
yeah. That's a
experience
really good
was,
way to put it.
is like your experience was saying your child had the same divine blueprint, the same
Right,
divine soul, the same
right,
divine heart as you did or anybody else did. But then your brain from conditioning was saying, but no, that's not the case. Right. And so then there's this cognitive dissonance and this internal battle of like, these two things can't both be true.
right.
So sorry to interrupt what you were saying, but I just, that's so clearly, it's been a part of my own journey is like
Yeah,
hearing this, I lost my brother to suicide. And at the time that he
right.
died, the messaging was they're lost in eternity. And
Mm-hmm. I remember
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, and that softened over the years, but it was very hard to um balance those
Mhm.
messages of like, no, I know my brother's okay, and I know my brother's this beautiful soul who was hurting and who was having some real challenges and other family members, other situations, and yet I'm hearing this
Mhm.
and it's not making any sense. And finally you
Yeah.
have to go, who am I going to believe? Am I going to believe the opinions out there, or am I going to
Right.
believe my experiences with God?
So that was really, I'm not going to say I never heard or heeded my voice before all of this started to happen. There
Yeah,
were
you
times,
obviously did. Yeah.
I mean, there were times that, I leaned into my own intuition, but this was different. And so that is, you're talking about how I claimed, or I got to this place of claiming my spiritual sovereignty. I think some of those experiences in the earlier stages of learning of my kiddo's identity, I had to listen
Yes.
to what was coming up for me. If I was going to, it, it was making me physically, mentally, emotionally ill not to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew what it was like to, I was taught in primary, like Sunday school days, to, this is a very, very basic way of stating this concept of integrity, but, choose the right to, to be truthful, right? And in order to not deny my own integrity, like to be able to live in my own truth, I had to listen to that voice. I couldn't just stuff it down. I couldn't just ignore it. I couldn't pretend it wasn't there. And because I saw the act of harm, it got to a place where I couldn't just sit by either. I
Yeah.
couldn't just be a spectator and just hope for, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, things would be different. Not when people were being actively hurt
Yeah.
in present day.
Well, and people that you love and you care
Yeah.
about, and your
Yeah.
child is important to you, and you see and feel that harm, but the harm wasn't just for your child. The harm was for you too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it
Asking you
affected
to
our
reject.
family. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
affected our overall, our family relationships and connections and, well, our salvation, if you really want to get,
Right.
specific and all of
Right.
that.
So how has this changed your concept or your understanding of spirituality? And what does that look like for you now versus like what does spiritual sovereignty look like?
Um, for me, it's more of a feeling, I guess. Uh, but nobody comes between me and the divine. I think
Mm,
that's kind of the bottom line for me. That's what spiritual sovereignty means. Like, I have a direct connection to the divine. We're taught that we have the seed of divinity within us. That means we're already divine
mhm.
beings, right? I
Yeah.
like to garden. I plant a seed of corn or watermelon seed or whatever. It is a miracle to me that that little tiny seed has everything it needs to begin that journey of growth. It's not a watermelon yet, but it has everything it needs to begin the journey. And then along the way, as it is cared for and nurtured and given sun and water and nutrients, that's when it begins to develop into who it already was
Mm,
from the beginning. It just needed time and it needed cultivation and care and um, nurturing and all of those yummy things
Yeah.
um, to reach its God-given, like already inherent potential.
Love that so much. And there's so much application
Mm-hmm.
for that in our own life. Like we already have that seed. That's what you're speaking of, right, Meagan? That we already
Yeah.
have that seed of divinity within us. We already have that
Yeah.
ability, and we can, tap into that with
Mm-hmm.
awareness and
Right.
consciousness and allowing ourselves to go
Right.
directly to source instead of looking outside of ourselves for that
Right.
direction. That's beautiful. How
Yeah,
is
the
that?
water.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the watermelon wouldn't become a watermelon if it started to, take from the cantaloupe next to it or the tomatoes or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah. It's so funny. I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I read this book to my kids when they were growing up, and it was
Mm-hmm.
about this bear that leaves his mom to go to school in the morning, and at school he draws this picture of his mom, and on the way home he runs into a giraffe and he says, "How do you like my picture of my mom?" And the giraffe says, "I love it, except the neck isn't long enough." And so he adjusts the picture, and then he runs into, goes to elephant. Oh, I love it, but the nose isn't long
Mm-hmm.
enough. And so he runs into all these different animals and keeps adjusting the picture to the ways or the opinions of these animals that have these characteristics. And by the time he gets home and shows it to his mom, of course, it doesn't look anything like his mom. And that's kind of what we do in the fishbowl that we live in, is we take on these conditionings from our experiences, and we
Mm-hmm.
try to adjust and change and, have the longer nose like the elephant,
Right.
the longer neck like the giraffe, and so forth. And pretty soon we're not recognizable. And I feel like when we
Mm-hmm.
can plug into that divine
Right.
center, that brings us back to
Right.
who we really are. It brings us back to that seed.
That's an excellent example of how we look to external cues to define ourselves and others
Mhm,
versus looking inward
mhm.
and for what's already there, right? Looking at the different animals that you were describing.
Yeah,
That's looking outside of ourselves,
yeah,
which is kind of how we're conditioned.
yeah, yeah. So what does your spiritual practice look like these days?
I heard it described. I love to listen to audiobooks. Don't remember which book this was, but basically, actually, yes, I do. It's the book that Oprah did with Albert Brooks, I think.
Okay.
Um, but basically, he presented this idea of set aside a little part of each day. He called it like a Sabbath within each day. You
Mm,
know, I loved that. Take
mm,
some time each day to just get quiet. I mean, that's what a Sunday observance is at its core, right? You're setting time aside to commune with the divine,
mhm,
to get quiet, to kind of close down or set yourself apart from all the noise that surrounds us constantly and really get to know yourself and be comfortable with being with you, with those that have, the divine that's within and without us, I guess.
mhm.
Um, and so that can look like a variety of things. I'm actually still, it's an ongoing learning process for
Yeah.
me. But I will um, try to, I say connect, but really what I mean is just feel close to, I'm trying to cultivate a relationship with my spirit guides and my angels. I don't really fully understand or know who or what that means just yet, but I do feel, much like I did in earlier life, I just have a broader vocabulary for describing it and understanding it. I almost ran out of gas once on my way home from dropping my kid off at school. And I literally asked for help pushing the car because I miscalculated the next exit and how much gas I had left.
Mm-hmm.
And there was nothing for miles. And well, I'm here. So clearly I made it. But I just, to me, that's been a really joyful thing. The book that I'm writing has been in conjunction with this mastermind that I've been a part of through Kara Brinton, and she's a book medium.
Mm-hmm.
And it is largely in part through the practices I've learned from her and through participation in this mastermind that has helped me to stay anchored in some kind of, like, not just give in to the hurt that was feeling and the pain and the betrayal and the just a lot of the hurt.
Yeah.
And so I yeah, I try different things on and see how that goes. I I'll do a body scan for myself, for others. I have learned to do a blessing of the body. Um, I haven't talked about this out loud. This is the first time, I think. Um, it's very much a work in progress,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately the connection that I feel is is there, still is there, right? And that inner voice is still there and always has been. And I mean, there are times when that channel is more open than
Mm.
others.
Yeah.
That isn't just going to spontaneously happen. I've learned a lot about energy clearing and what that means for me and my spiritual practice as well.
Yeah.
I've learned to protect my energy better, right? Identify what I've heard called energy vampires,
Mm-hmm.
not let them suck the life out of me. And that means choosing boundaries for myself that then are conducive to a healthier spiritual, emotional, mental life.
Yeah. I love that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's almost like, the pain points of our life are I keep I keep seeing the seed again that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The seed doesn't grow until the shell of the seed kind of breaks open.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like the pain points of our life are those pain points that break open that shell that allow us to
Yeah.
explore at a, going from the certainty of
Mm-hmm.
the shell into the uncertainty of growth. And it's just a beautiful journey, and I appreciate you so much sharing your journey with us today.
Yeah.
How can people find you, Megan? What's the best way to connect with you?
I have a presence on social media. On Instagram, it's just Meagan Skidmore Coaching. On Facebook, the same. But also my website, meganskidmorecoaching.com. It's all the same
That's
everywhere you
awesome.
go.
That's wonderful.
And I am in the final stages of this emotional alchemy certification. I'm not sure when this will air, but I could leave you a link. While I'm still in certification, I'm offering complimentary emotional alchemy sessions with clients who are curious and who are interested in learning more. And simultaneously, it helps me meet the requirements for the certification. And I don't know how to describe it in the short time that we have, but let me just share what a client said a couple hours ago at the end of the session. She's like, "Wow, that was wicked cool." Yeah,
That sounds amazing.
it is. I love
Yeah.
it.
And this will air fairly soon, so
Okay.
yeah, yeah, that'll
Yeah.
be good.
And
That'll
I'll
be
probably
really good.
still be in the certification.
Awesome. People can take advantage of that. So
Yes, please
great.
do.
They can find that in the show notes. If you're listening on YouTube, there'll be a link to the show notes below. If you're listening on any of the other podcast apps, it'll be there too. And yeah, awesome. Thank you so
Neat.
much for being
No,
here.
thank you, Julie.
You did.
Wow.
It's been wonderful.
It has. I appreciate you and your work.
Thanks so much. Good to see you.
You too.